held at Westminster Abbey, the resting place of monarchs and the traditional site of state funerals for centuries. Ahead of the service, a funeral procession will escort the Queen's coffin to the Abbey from the Houses of Parliament, where it's been lying in state. The coffin, draped with the Royal Standard, will be borne on the state gun carriage of the Royal Navy. The Royal Marines will lead the procession around Parliament Square. Behind, senior members of the royal family, including her children and the King, will be accompanied on the journey to the Abbey by the sound of massed pipes and muffled drums. The procession will enter the great west door of Westminster Abbey at exactly 11 o'clock, marking the start of the funeral service. The Queen will be carried past the grave of the unknown warrior and down the nave of the Abbey. Following, as they pass under the ornate gilded entrance to the choir, will be the Archbishop of Canterbury and other senior clergy. And then the coffin, followed by the King and senior members of the royal family, will be taken to the very heart of the Abbey, the lantern, and placed in front of the high altar. Members of the royal family will be seated alongside. Behind them, in the south transept, heads of state, leaders and royalty from around the world. Sitting opposite, holders of the Victoria and George Cross, their counterparts from the Commonwealth and members of the nation's highest order of chivalry. While the Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers and the leaders of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland will sit in the Abbey's choir stalls. The Dean of Westminster will lead the service. Lessons will be read by the Prime Minister and the Secretary-General of the Commonwealth. The sermon will be given by the Archbishop of Canterbury. At the end of the service, the last post will be sounded from the Gothic splendour of the Lady Chapel, resting place of kings and queens, including Elizabeth I, going back 700 years. A 2-minute silence will be observed throughout the United Kingdom before the reveille is sounded by trumpeters of the Household Cavalry, and in the Abbey the national anthem is sung. The final act in the service will be a procession of the Queen's coffin back through the choir and along the nave, out of the Abbey and back onto the state gun carriage before it's taken to Windsor and her final resting